My wife thought she'd erased us forever, burned us into silence for an insurance check. But our 8-year-old son tugged my sleeve at the airport and whispered, "Dad, please don't go home tonight." I listened, and what we saw in the dark that night still follows me into every dream I have left. Before I go on, let me thank you for being here with me. If you'd like to hear more stories from someone who's lived long enough to learn the hard lessons, I'd be grateful if you'd subscribe, and maybe share where you're listening from. Your presence means more than you know, especially for stories like this one. I spent most of my life believing danger was something you could measure, calculate, manage. Engineers like me are taught that nothing fails without giving a warning first. A strain line, a temperature spike, a sound that doesn't belong. But people don't always come with warning signs. And the heart, well, it rarely follows the rules. Back then, before everything cracked open, my world felt steady, predictable. I used to wake before sunrise, sit at the kitchen counter with my old chipped mug, and listen to the heater click on. That soft hum made the house feel warm long before the day began. My wife, Melissa, would come down the stairs with her tablet tucked under her arm, already lost in emails. She liked order, routines, efficiency, she'd say. I once admired that about her, how she kept our lives neatly aligned while I buried myself in blueprints and safety diagrams. And there was Noah, our boy. 8 years old, quiet, but not the kind of quiet that comes from shyness. The kind that comes from watching, studying, absorbing. A kid who heard things most adults missed. He'd sit across from me eating cereal, swinging his legs, eyes sharp and thoughtful. Those mornings were simple. Warm sunlight, half-burnt toast, Noah asking how turbines breathe or why bridges don't fall. I'd draw little diagrams on napkins, and he'd nod like he was memorizing every line. He noticed everything. Far more than I understood at the time. Life then felt comfortable in a soft, familiar way, even if I ignored how the seams were loosening. Melissa traveled often for work. Even when she wasn't traveling, she stayed late in her home office, typing long into the night. I told myself she was ambitious, dedicated, building something for us. Funny how easily comfort disguises itself as peace. Looking back now, I can see the small fractures. A late phone call she waved off with a tight smile. A locked drawer in her office for client files. A dark sedan parked across from our house 3 nights in a row. Nothing big, nothing loud. Just quiet disruptions that I brushed aside because acknowledging them felt inconvenient. Then there was the night Noah padded into the living room past midnight. I was reading. Melissa was upstairs. "Dad," he whispered. "Mom's talking to someone. She sounds scared." I told him he was half asleep. I told him grown-ups worry about strange things. I tucked him in and kissed his forehead. But children don't exaggerate fear. They see it plain. And still life went on as if nothing was wrong. The morning everything changed started like that too. Melissa came downstairs already dressed for her trip. She looked perfect, hair pulled back, blazer fitted, suitcase rolling behind her. She said she'd only be in Chicago for a night. "Quick meetings," she said. Back Friday. She kissed my cheek and told me to be good to each other while she was gone. I remember tying Noah's shoelace as she walked toward the garage and thinking how lucky we were. How steady. How normal. In the car, Noah tugged my sleeve. "Dad, Mom's been acting weird." I laughed gently. Told him adults get tired. Told him she'd be home soon. But he didn't laugh. He just gripped his dinosaur backpack and stared out the window. If only I'd listened then. If only I'd felt the shift he felt. We drove to the airport like we always did. I dropped her off at the curb. She gave me one of her practiced smiles, waved, and disappeared through the sliding doors. Nothing seemed out of place. Not a single tremor in the air. It should have been an ordinary Thursday. I pulled away from the terminal with the wipers brushing light rain from the windshield. Noah sat quietly behind me. Too quiet. Even for him. I assumed he was tired. But then, somewhere along the highway, he reached forward, small fingers trembling, and wrapped his hand around my arm. "Dad, please don't go home tonight." Not a whine, not a childish worry. A plea, a trembling, urgent plea from a boy who rarely asked for anything. I glanced back at him. His eyes were wide, pale, frightened. "Please," he whispered. "This time, just believe me." I didn't understand what he meant, not fully. But something in his voice, some raw, breaking truth, settled deep inside me. And that was the moment everything shifted. The moment comfort died, and survival began. I didn't know it then, but that silence was the last real peace I'd feel for a long, long time. The airport drop-off should have been the end of a simple errand. A kiss, a wave, a promise to text when she landed. Nothing unusual, nothing suspicious. Just a husband driving home in the rain. Just a boy staring out the back window, too quiet for a child his age. I remember asking, "You okay back there, buddy?" No answer. Just the soft scrape of his backpack straps twisting between his fingers. Traffic moved in slow currents around us. Streetlights blurred across the windshield. And then, Noah's small hand came forward and gripped my forearm with a force that startled me. "Dad, please don't go home tonight." The world didn't stop, but something inside me did. I glanced into the rearview mirror. His face was pale, eyes wider than I'd ever seen. This wasn't a tantrum. This wasn't imagination. This was fear. Raw, shaking fear. "What do you mean?" I asked, trying to keep my voice steady. He swallowed hard. "Please, you have to believe me this time." Those words, "this time," cut straight through me. I eased the car onto the shoulder. Rain hissed on the windows. My pulse thudded in my ears. "Noah, tell me." He looked down at his hands. I heard Mom. She was talking to someone. A man. I didn't mean to listen, but she said they were coming tonight. She said you wouldn't feel anything. My stomach tightened. Who was the man? I don't know. She sounded scared. Or angry. And she said she left a key. A key. My chest hollowed. My first instinct was denial. A reflex as old as marriage itself. But then every sign I'd ignored came rushing back. The locked office drawer. The stranger's car watching our street. The late-night calls she never explained. I whispered, "Why didn't you tell me sooner?" Tears clung to his lashes. "I did, last week. You said I was worrying too much." Shame hit me like a cold wave. My son had been trying to warn me, and I brushed him aside. He tightened his grip. "Please, Dad, don't go home." And for the first time I heard him, not as a child, not as someone imagining shadows, but as the only person telling me the truth. I took a shaky breath. "Okay," I said softly. "I believe you." His whole body loosened. A quiet, trembling sigh escaped his chest. We didn't drive home. Instead, we parked across the street, hidden beneath the branches of 2 tall oaks, engine off, lights off. The house looked peaceful. The porch light glowed softly behind the maple tree. Nothing seemed out of place. For a moment, I wondered if I'd made a terrible mistake. Maybe Noah misunderstood. Maybe exhaustion twisted his thoughts. "Dad," he whispered, "just a little longer, please." So we waited. Minutes stretched into hours. Then, at 10:47 p.m., a dark van rolled down the street with its headlights off. Slow, deliberate, a predator stalking familiar ground. It stopped directly in front of our home. 2 men stepped out, hooded, masked, calm, professional. They didn't glance around. They didn't hesitate. One reached the front door, pulled something from his pocket. A key. Our key. My breath caught. Noah pressed his forehead to the window. "Dad!" "I see it," I whispered. The man slid the key in, turned it. The deadbolt clicked with a softness that felt like betrayal breaking open inside my chest. They entered the house like it belonged to them. I fumbled for my phone, hands shaking, but before I could dial, a sharp chemical scent drifted across the street. Accelerant, heavy, oily, familiar. They weren't robbing my home. They were preparing it. Smoke curled from the windows. Then a muted whoosh. A bloom of orange swallowed the living room. Glass cracked. Flames surged. The house we built, beam by beam, paycheck by paycheck, turned into an inferno. The men walked out calmly, climbed back into the van, and disappeared around the corner like they were clocking out from a shift. Noah's voice broke. "Mom told them where the key was, didn't she?" I couldn't answer, because my silence was the answer. We watched firefighters arrive too late. We watched memories burn. We watched the life we knew turn to ash. And in that glow of flames, with my son crying against my shoulder, one truth settled deep in my bones. My wife hadn't just lied. She hadn't just drifted away. She'd planned our deaths. And that was the moment, quiet, cold, steady, when something inside me shifted. I didn't scream. I didn't rage. But I knew, without a doubt, I would not stay silent. When the house finally collapsed inward, sending sparks spiraling into the night sky, a strange quiet settled inside me. Not peace, not shock, something heavier, something that sat behind my ribs like a weight I couldn't shift. I held Noah close as the firefighters shouted orders, dragging hoses across the pavement. Their voices were urgent and sharp, but in my head everything sounded distant, like someone had pressed cotton over the world. My home, our home, was gone. But what hollowed me out wasn't the flames. It was knowing someone I once trusted with my life had opened the door for those flames to enter. We drove away before the police could notice us. I kept the streets dim and winding, avoiding intersections, avoiding headlights. I didn't trust anything. Not anymore. At the motel, the air smelled like stale carpet and old smoke. The kind of place no one remembers and no one questions. I paid in cash, gave a false last name, asked for a room far from the front desk. Noah collapsed on the bed, exhaustion dragging him under in minutes. His tiny shoes were still on. I didn't have the heart to take them off. My hands trembled as I sat alone at the small table, staring at the single lamp buzzing above me. I could still smell the fire, still hear the shattering glass, still see the key, our key, turning in the lock. I pressed the heels of my palms against my eyes, trying to steady my breathing. It didn't work. For years, I convinced myself my marriage was simply fraying. Long hours, stress, miscommunication. Every classic excuse a tired husband uses when something feels wrong but not wrong enough to face. But now, it was all laid bare. Not as a suspicion, not as a fear, but as a fact burning in my memory. She wanted us gone. I thought about our wedding day, how she smiled when we danced, or at least, how I thought she smiled. My mind replayed moments like old film reels, but something felt different now. Off, too posed, too sharp around the edges. Was she happy then? Or was I seeing what I wanted to see? I rubbed my hands together slowly. My fingers ached. I didn't realize until that moment that they were shaking again. Outside, the rain resumed, a slow tapping against the window, a lonely rhythm, the kind that makes a man think about everything he ignored. Every late business trip she took, every quiet phone call she stepped outside to answer, every time she said she was fine with that voice that didn't sound fine at all. I replayed Noah's words, soft, terrified. Dad, you have to believe me this time. Guilt twisted in me. I hadn't listened, not when he noticed the strange car, not when he mentioned her late-night whispering, not when he told me she cried after phone calls she wouldn't explain. He tried to tell me, and I failed him. I sat on the edge of the bed, brushing my hand over his hair. He slept curled on his side, fists tucked close to his chest. A position children take when they're trying to protect themselves. A lump caught in my throat. What did she do to you, buddy? The words barely left me. I stood and walked to the bathroom sink, splashing cold water on my face. The mirror was clouded at the edges, flickering with the fluorescent light above. My reflection looked older, harder, like a man who'd been forced awake after years of drifting through life half asleep. I needed to think, but every thought felt jagged. She planned this. She arranged the arson. She left the key. She wanted the insurance money. She wanted a new life. Without us. Without him. That thought nearly buckled my knees. I gripped the sides of the sink, steadied myself, and let the truth settle. She had already chosen her future, and we were not part of it. I walked back into the room, turned off the light, and sat in the dark, listening to Noah breathe, letting the silence speak. Hours passed like slow-moving shadows. I wasn't angry, not yet. Anger requires energy, and mine had bled out somewhere between the fire trucks and the motel parking lot. What I felt instead was a quiet emptiness, a hollowing, a sense of standing at the edge of something vast and unknown. But inside that emptiness, something small began to form, a seed of clarity, a thin thread of resolve. I couldn't undo the fire. I couldn't undo the betrayal, but I could decide what happened next. I leaned back against the wall, exhaled slowly, and whispered to myself, I need to think very carefully. The beginning of a plan, still foggy, still fragile, stirred in the back of my mind. Because I wasn't just a husband anymore. I was a father, a survivor, And now, whether I wanted to be or not, I was a man preparing for a truth that would change everything. Sleep never came that night, not even for a moment. I sat in the dark motel room, listening to Noah breathe, letting the weight of everything press down until my thoughts stopped racing and started aligning. Calm. Measured. Exactly how I used to think when solving failures at work. Only this time, the failure was my marriage, my home, my trust. And the cost could have been my son's life. I didn't feel anger. Not yet. Just a cold, steady purpose settling into my bones. Something I hadn't felt in years. Something sharp and awake. I pulled the small motel notepad toward me and clicked the pen. The first line I wrote wasn't a plan. It was a reminder. Don't react. Build. That was what separated engineers from panicked men. And right now, I couldn't afford panic. I listed the facts, the real ones, not the ones I'd convinced myself to believe over the years. My wife gave strangers a key to our home. They used accelerant, professional work. She created an alibi. She expected Noah and me to die quietly. She expected to collect insurance. She expected a new life without us. Seeing the truth written out made my chest tighten. But it also cleared my mind. Intent leaves patterns, and patterns could be traced. Around 4 a.m., I felt something strange, stability. Not comfort, just steadiness. I looked over at Noah. He'd rolled onto his back, legs sprawled, breathing easy now. The smallest flicker of peace crossed his face. My hand lifted instinctively, like I could shield him from even the memories of that night. I won't fail you again, I whispered. And I meant every word. At sunrise, I made the first move. I stepped outside and dialed a number I hadn't used in years, one my father pressed into my hand before he died. A woman named Helena Reeves. He said she was the only attorney he trusted for matters that needed quiet strength. When she answered, her voice was calm, steady, as if she expected my call. Tell me everything, she said. And I did. No interruptions, no disbelief, no shock, only silence, followed by a slow exhale. She planned your deaths, Helena said. Not a question, a confirmation. Yes. And you're sure about the key? I saw them use it. And the accelerant? It was deliberate. Another pause. Then, you already know what you need. You just need proof she can't escape. Exactly what my mind had been circling all night. I need her words, I said quietly, from her mouth. Good, Helena replied, because text messages can be challenged, but a confession. She let that thought hang. A confession is the nail in the coffin. I closed my eyes. A confession. From the woman who once vowed to love me. From the mother of my child. But truth is truth, even when it ruins the life you thought you had. Helena continued. Your wife believes you're dead. That gives you leverage. Shock can loosen a guilty tongue. I swallowed hard. She wasn't wrong. We'll plan this properly, she said. Not in anger, in precision. The word precision hit something inside me. Familiar, comforting. The way I used to feel when solving complex systems with simple truths. We start today, Helena added. Find her car at the airport. Look for anything she left behind. Documents, messages, receipts. Anything that ties her to the men she hired. My breath slowed. Yes. Her car. Her mistakes. Her confidence. She won't expect you to move this fast, Helena said. And that's good. Overconfidence makes guilty people careless. I hung up and felt something shift inside me. A calmness. A readiness. My son stirred in his sleep, mumbling something soft. Maybe my name, maybe just a dream. But when he turned and his small hand brushed the empty space beside him, the space where a mother used to lie, it hit me with a kind of ache words we'll never fully capture. She abandoned us long before the fire, and now she would face the truth she tried to burn away. By 7 a.m., I knew exactly what needed to happen. The burner phone, the withdrawals, the key placement, the blueprints she studied, the men she hired. I would find them, document them, and then let her speak herself into the ground with her own mouth. This was no longer about revenge. This was correction, reality, a line drawn clean and quiet. I folded the notepad page and slid it into my wallet. A single sentence at the bottom read, They think silence means defeat, but silence, when held by the right person, is strategy. I stood, walked to the window, and watched the morning light bleed across the wet pavement. The fear was gone now. So was the disbelief. What remained was purpose. My wife tried to make me disappear, tried to rewrite the story of my life, without me in it. But now the story was mine again, and the stage was set. All I had to do was wait. I still remember the sound of that coffee shop door opening. Soft, ordinary, the kind of sound you hear 100 times and never think twice about. But that morning, at exactly 10:02, it carried the weight of 2 lives she tried to erase. I sat at the small table by the window, hands wrapped around a cup I'd barely touched. The wire beneath my shirt felt strange against my skin, warm, almost alive, like it knew what we were here to do. Detective Shaw whispered through the earpiece, steady and low, "Breathe. She's coming in now." And then I saw her. Clara. The woman I once believed would walk beside me through every season of life. Her hair was pulled back, neat and composed. Her clothes were dark, mourning colors, as if she were preparing to receive condolences for the husband and child she thought were ashes. She scanned the crowd, searching for the fire investigator she believed had summoned her. Her eyes passed right over me, stopped, came back. Shock froze her. Her hand rose halfway to her mouth. Her knees seemed to soften. And for a moment, she didn't look like a mastermind or a betrayer. She looked like someone who'd seen a ghost. I suppose she had. She took a step toward me, then another. Her voice trembled. "Elias?" I lifted my eyes. "Sit down, Clara." She lowered herself into the chair as if gravity suddenly grew heavier. Her hands reached for mine out of instinct, but I drew back. The hurt flashed across her face, and she pulled her fingers into her lap. "You're alive," she whispered. "Yes," I said quietly. "Thanks to our son." Her jaw tightened. "Elias, this isn't— Don't lie to me," I said, not loudly, not angrily, just with a stillness that made her breath hitch. Her eyes darted toward the exit. Detective Shaw murmured in my ear, "Keep her talking. She'll run if you press too hard." I slid folded papers across the table, photos of the burner phone messages, receipts, the blueprint copies she marked with red ink. Clara stared down at them. Her face drained of color. "Where did you get these?" she asked, her voice thin. "Your car," I said. "The one you left at the airport." She swallowed hard. "You broke into—" "I used the spare key," I interrupted. "The one you didn't know I kept." Her eyes flicked up to mine. Anger, fear, calculation all twisting together. I tapped one photograph gently. The text circled in red. The message that chilled my blood the moment I first read it. "The child is collateral." Clara closed her eyes. "Say it," I whispered. "Say what you planned." Her lips trembled. "Elias, please, say it." Something inside her snapped. The mask she'd worn for years cracked straight down the middle, and the face beneath it, the real one, finally surfaced. She lifted her chin, and her voice lost its tremor. "You want the truth?" she hissed softly. The cafe around us seemed to mute itself. People slowed, sensing tension but not understanding it. Clara leaned forward, eyes cold and absolute. "I hired them." My breath left me, slow, controlled. "I wanted out," she continued. "I wanted the insurance money. I wanted my life back. And you," her eyes narrowed, "you were in the way. Both of you." The words weren't shouted. They were whispered with the calm of someone admitting something they'd already accepted. Her face was inches from mine now. "For once," she murmured, "I chose myself." Silence, a heavy, suffocating silence. Detective Shaw's voice came through the earpiece. "Got it. Every word." I sat back, breath steady, heart strangely quiet. Clara finally seemed to notice how still the cafe had become. People glanced our way, some curious, some uneasy. She frowned. "Why are you looking at me like that?" I opened my jacket just enough for her to see the microphone taped against my chest. Her eyes widened, her breath hitched sharply. Her entire body jerked back like she'd been struck. "No," she whispered. "No, Elias, what did you do?" I didn't answer, because the door of the cafe opened again, and this time it wasn't soft. It wasn't ordinary. Detective Shaw stepped inside, badge raised, followed by 2 officers dressed as customers moments earlier. "Clara Morgan," Shaw said, voice firm and clear, "you are under arrest for attempted murder, conspiracy to commit murder, and arson." Clara shot to her feet. No, you can't. Elias, tell them. Tell them this is a mistake." But her voice had lost all its control. It cracked, shrill, desperate. Shaw approached calmly. "We have your confession on tape. Everything you just said is recorded." She whipped toward me. "You did this," she spat. You betrayed me." I met her eyes, finally steady, finally resolved. "No," I said softly. "You betrayed us a long time ago." She lunged, but an officer caught her wrists, pulling her arms behind her. As they cuffed her, the last of her composure shattered. She screamed my name, screamed Noah's, screamed for a life she tried to burn down. But I didn't move, not toward her, not away. I simply watched as they led her out of the cafe and into the bright morning light. The moment the door swung shut behind her, the world exhaled. And in that trembling silence, I felt something inside me finally let go. Some evenings now, when the house is quiet and Noah has drifted off to sleep, I sit by the window with a cup of tea and let my mind settle in the stillness. The world feels different after you've watched someone you love try to erase you. It gets quieter, not empty, just clearer. People ask if I ever think about Clara. The truth is, yes, every day. Not with anger, not even with grief anymore. Just a kind of slow, honest understanding. She made her choices, and those choices carved a line between the life we had and the life Noah and I live now. For a long time, that line felt jagged, sharp, something I tripped over in the dark. I kept trying to make sense of it, trying to understand how someone could smile at a child in the morning and plan his death by nightfall. But life has a way of softening even the hardest edges, not erasing them. No, some things never leave you, but softening them enough that you can hold them without bleeding. Some nights I watch Noah sleep, his chest rising and falling in that steady rhythm only children have. And I think about how close I came to losing him, how close he came to losing me. I think about the moment at the airport, the moment he tugged my sleeve and said, "Dad, please don't go home tonight." That quiet plea saved our lives. My wife tried to make me disappear, but my son spoke first. That truth lives in every decision I make now. It shapes the way I listen to him, the way I move through the world, the way I trust my own instincts. I used to believe danger came loudly, crashing through the door, breaking glass, shattering the peace. But the real danger, it lived right beside me, wearing familiarity like a mask. So I learned something I'll carry into the years ahead and pass on to him when he's old enough to understand. Sometimes survival isn't about fighting harder. Sometimes it's about paying attention sooner. Today, Noah laughs again. He sleeps through most nights. He asks questions about life, not fear. And when he runs across the yard with sunlight on his shoulders, I see proof that healing doesn't shout. It grows, slowly, quietly, but always forward, and that is enough. If you've listened this far, thank you. Tell me, would you have trusted that small voice, the way my son asked me to? Share your thoughts below, and subscribe if you'd like to hear more stories from an old man still learning his lessons.